In 1993 in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, pianist Ben Folds formed a unique trio with bassist Robert Sledge and drummer Darren Jesse. Despite their name Ben Folds 5 suggesting, 5 members, they were actually just 3 musicians. Folds later explained he chose 5 because it simply sounded better than 3. For the next 7 years or so, the band charted their own path, not following typical musical norms, and in the process, they won over critics and plenty of fans along the way. In today's video, because you guys requested it, let's talk about the history of Ben Folds 5. Raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Ben Folds was the son of an amateur painter and contractor. You can even hear an answering machine message from his dad on the group's third record. Folds lived all across America, put in time playing piano bars in Florida, doing musical theater in New York City, and writing songs in Nashville. When he was just 9 years old, his dad accepted a piano as a form of payment for a construction project. It was common for Folds to stand in line at the school cafeteria trying to memorize the melodies that were bouncing around in his head. He soon took piano lessons for about a year, waking up his dad every morning at 6:30 with his playing. But piano lessons were too regimented for Folds, who told an interviewer, "I kind of bailed on that. I just kind of lost discipline after my first recital. I started pounding it." Folds spent upwards of about 8 hours a day listening to records, telling The Guardian, "I probably would have been called functioning Asperger's or OCD or ADHD or something like that." He cited Elton John, Billy Joel, Randy Newman, Oscar Peterson, and R&B as his biggest influences. He heard Elton John at a young age and thought that he could do the same. But Folds admitted that from a young age, he was really struggling playing piano, breaking a lot of things simply out of frustration, including piano benches and putting holes in the walls. He gave up piano for a period of time and picked up guitar and drums. He didn't start playing piano again until the late 80s or early 90s. Folds was playing music in many different outfits before forming Ben Folds 5. He played in a variety of bands in North Carolina before getting a scholarship to go to the University of Miami's Frost School of Music, where he studied drums. One interview claimed that he dropped out after only one semester, while another claimed he was 1 credit shy of graduating. Either way, he soon lost his scholarship and tossed his drum kit into a lake. He spent a little bit of time playing at piano bars in Florida, and he soon moved back to North Carolina by 1985, attending the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where he formed the band Majosha, which he referred to as an anything goes type of band, who actually put out a few releases and won a Battle of the Bands competition at Duke University in 1988. But Majosha wasn't a good fit for Folds, who told his St. Louis Dispatch, "I think it was a little too cheesy for me, too showbiz oriented." He soon moved to Nashville, working as a session drummer and songwriter. Again, some articles claim that he was one or the other. He didn't have much success, though. He managed to sign a publishing deal, but nothing really came of this. It proved to be a painful 2 years for the aspiring musician, with an entertainment lawyer telling him, "Look, why don't you write some stuff that we can get a deal with, pop stuff." Folds ended up coming up with the tune Boxing, which told the story of a conversation between boxer Muhammad Ali and sportscaster Howard Cosell. The song eventually found its way onto the first Ben Folds 5 record. Howard, now I confess. Folds told Rolling Stone, "I was serious. I wasn't joking. They put it in the tape recorder. I was like, you'll love this. This is going to be a hit. I just sat back and watched their faces drop. I was sick. I knew I was in the wrong place." Folds later remarked to an interviewer that the song was later pitched to both Billy Ray Cyrus and Garth Brooks, but they passed on the offer. But during his time in Nashville, Folds did purchase a piano with the idea that at some point in time he was going to start a piano-centric band. Folds soon relocated to New York City, where he was an understudy for one of the actors and played in the pit band in what he described as an off-Broadway play of the Buddy Holly story. Apart from the play, Folds was also playing clubs in the city when Alan Wallmark, who later went on to co-manage Ben Folds 5, saw the aspiring musician at a place called The Bitter End in 1993. He told Rolling Stone the songs were incredible and his focus and commitment to what he does showed right through. Several days later, the manager saw Folds once again at a different club, but there wasn't enough space for a piano, so Folds used an electric keyboard. Woolmark told Folds, "You absolutely have to promise me that you'll never do this again, that you'll always carry a real piano." By early 1994, Folds moved back to North Carolina, residing in Chapel Hill. There was a burgeoning music scene in the city. Groups like Archers of Loaf, Polvo, and Superchunk, as well as Squirrel Nut Zippers, hailed from the same area. By January of 94, Folds recruited local bassist Robert Sledge and drummer Darren Jesse, who were also from the same state. Sledge and Folds had actually met each other previously in Greensboro, and Sledge was the first person Folds spoke to about starting a piano-centric band. Sledge had previously played in the group Toxic Popsicles that had 2 drummers. Sledge was a little nervous, though, about getting a call from Folds telling the Central New Jersey Home News, "I thought I owed him money or something," adding, "Ben had this reputation for being a really good player, and I wasn't sure if I was up to it." They soon enlisted drummer Darren Jesse, with Folds having the idea of forming a guitar-free piano trio that rocked with the energy of a guitar band. Folds cited the live Elton John album 11-1770 as the inspiration for forming the group. He remarked, "That totally did it. The one difference between us and that record is when the band plays together, there's a lot of clarity between the instruments. We rock out, the instruments blur. And I think that's a generational thing. It's okay to be a little lower-fi because of what we heard when we were growing up." He also cited the fact that no other bands were really doing what they were doing, and that he played the piano like he plays the guitar. Also, by not having a guitarist, Folds added that the most creative thing you could do is put a limitation on someone and see how they respond to it. But transporting their piano, a 5'2" long Baldwin Baby Grand, in a yellow rider van from gig to gig, proved to be a difficult task. Some doormen and club owners rolled their eyes at the proposition. Calling themselves Ben Folds 5, they soon started playing gigs just a few weeks after forming, and it took the trio about 6 months to get noticed in Chapel Hill. The group's buzz-filled bass and Folds' heavy-hitting style made up for the lack of guitar. It also resulted in Folds having bleeding and swollen hands after gigs. He told the New York Times, "One of my ambitions is to make the piano feel like a rock instrument again. I want the challenge of taking the format we use, piano, bass, and drums, into rock arena territory." Adding to the plain dealer, for us, we like to have the bass really loud and more prominent, basically all the instruments kind of like fighting each other. Everyone's a bit of a soloist at times. The band drew comparisons to another late 90s group, Morphine, who also chose to forego guitars. The band soon signed a deal with indie label Caroline Records, a contract that was signed during Jesse's lunch break at a place where he was flipping burgers. But the trio soon ran into trouble when recording their first album. Keep in mind, the band had only been together for about 6 months by the time they worked on their debut record. They initially cut the album in Philadelphia with producer Stiff Johnson, whose credits included rapper G-Love. They spent a week recording the album, but they felt the recording was too ornate, so they soon ditched them. They went back home to Chapel Hill and worked with producer Caleb Southern. Looking at this change, Folds told a North Carolina paper, "It was pretty good, but it just wasn't us. There was almost too much of an emphasis on the songs. I know that sounds weird because there's supposed to be this ethic of serving the song, but the performances have to be there." He added, "Caleb came up with a way to do what we do live and have it come out that way on tape." The band also took some inspiration from a trio that may surprise you, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Folds told an interviewer, "The way Hendrix played these bluesy, jazzy things over the spontaneous rhythm section had a big impact on the way we recorded this album." The producer, Caleb Southern, was soon referred to as the 4th member of the band, and he went on to work with the group on their first 3 releases. The producer told an interviewer, "A lot of Ben's stuff has a third-person edge to it. There's a distance to it, like you're looking at it from behind a plate of glass." Ben was quick to point out that not all of his songs were 100% autobiographical, or as we'll discuss in some cases if they were, he'd leave some things out. Ben Folds 5 released their debut album, which was self-titled, in 1995. But the band, despite having the album done, had another difficult task ahead. They weren't exactly the easiest band to market. After all, they had no guitar. Radio at the time seemed obsessed with guitar-focused bands and female rockers. the trio's co-manager Alan Woolmark told the Carolina paper that he was involved with popular pianist Bruce Hornsby. In fact, Woolmark was the director of promotion at RCA Records in the 80s, where Hornsby was signed to, and they heard the same critiques back then that he wasn't marketable.
That's just the way it is.
Early detractors of Ben Folds 5 remarked that the band was either too soft for rock stations or not underground enough for college radio, with the co-manager adding, "We need to take the fringes of every format or style that we might have some appeal and weave that together with some clever marketing." By August of '96, the trio had already played Japan and England, where they were getting some traction, in addition to MTV's 120 Minutes, which was playing several of their songs, including the sarcastic track Underground and Uncle Walter. Underground was a comical song about how the nerds in high school became part of the in crowd in the alternative scene and soon shunned their high school bullies. The song ended up peaking at number 37 on the UK singles chart. Ben Folds 5 came up during a time when other alternative acts were sprouting up like Weezer, Soul Coughing, and Beck, who, while exciting, left some critics wondering whether they'd prove to be novelties.
I'm a loser, baby, so why don't you kill me? Move aside and let the man go through. Let the man go through.
In doing press for the album, the trio referred to their music as pop, with Folds telling the LA Times, "It takes a lot more guts to play pop music in alternative scene than it does to play alternative music in the pop scene. It's a lot more radical thing to do. You get beat up more." Rolling Stone referred to Ben Folds as a geek, while other critics called him Mr. Rogers and even Jerry Lee Lewis. Folds, however, claimed that the comparisons didn't bother him. He also referred to the trio's music as punk rock for sissies, while the press frequently compared their music to Todd Rundgren, Joe Jackson, Squeeze, The Kinks, Billy Joel, and of course Elton John. There was also this term being thrown around by the press in the mid-90s called slumcore, which referred to former punks who started playing more mature music, and they would sometimes refer to Ben Folds 5 by this term, in addition to fellow Chapel Hill native Squirrel Nut Zippers who were now playing old-timey jazz.
Fame, money, refinement, top skill and brain, but all the things you try to hide.
To promote their first album, the trio nabbed an opening slot with Better Than Ezra and Heather Nova, in addition to playing the side stage at Lollapalooza. It's estimated that their debut record sold about 200,000 copies. The band did grow tired of getting the same questions asked again and again in the press, like why are there only 3 people in the group and why no guitar player? But the band decided to have some fun with the whole thing, and they spun some funny tales, something they were actually known for in the press in their subsequent years as well. The members jokingly told the press that the band members met at a gay disco on karaoke night. Another was that they were originally a Christian rock band who lost their recording contract after a song called with a Knife. Another story was that former Journey drummer Steve Smith climbed up the hotel balcony of the members and asked to be let into the group. Sledge joked to Rolling Stone that when they played Japan, "We negated ourselves completely. We lied so much that it was almost like we weren't even there." As for the stories they told in their songs, Folds told a Palm Beach Post, "I try to put as much of my conversational self into the songs as possible. I mean, I've laughed at funerals before. I'm the type of person that makes a joke in the middle of a tough breakup. It's important to retain a sense of humor and keep one's composure. It comes naturally to me." Folds also told Spin that being Southern and working class, people called him a sissy for simply singing and playing piano, adding, "Well, if I can make a joke out of this, I won't get my ass kicked." With all the attention the group was receiving, labels soon took notice. Folds recalled to the Palm Beach Post how at every gig, it was becoming common to see at least 2 or 3 label presidents in the audience who want to take them to dinner afterwards. They eventually signed with Sony-owned 550 Records for an alleged $500,000. The members even joked about calling their second record Waist High and Hookers and Coke. The band also considered calling their second record Cigarette, but they went with the title Whatever and Ever Amen, with the name coming from the line in the song Battle of Who Could Care Less. With major label cash behind them now, the band did something unusual. They used the recording budget to make some updates to Folds' own personal home and record their second album in his house to buy themselves a little bit more time. The album produced the band's biggest hit of their career, the single Brick. The track reached number 19 on the US radio charts, number 6 on the US alternative charts. It went to number 13 in Australia and number 26 in the UK, in addition to getting heavy play on MTV and VH1.
She's a brick and I'm drowning slowly off the coast.
The song, whose meaning appeared to be lost on many, is about a difficult topic, abortion. The word doesn't appear in the song, something that it actually shared with the Goo Goo Dolls' song Slide, which was, of course, another hit around this time and discussed the same topic. Case of Brick, it was autobiographical. It was about Folds' time in high school as a senior when he drove his then girlfriend to a clinic. Folds actually wrote the song originally on guitar instead of piano and credited Jesse with writing the chorus. Brick was actually the last song the band recorded for the album. In an interview with The Guardian, Folds revealed that there's plenty of stuff not mentioned in the song, like the 2 jobs he worked to pay it off. The final year of high school, both he and his then partner mostly missed, their sympathetic parents, and the emotional aftershocks. Surprisingly, Folds didn't want to issue the song as a single, telling The Guardian, "I dreaded that song coming out. I tried to talk the manager and label people out of it, that it wasn't a hit. It's upright piano, it's all out of tune. At the time it was written, though, the point wasn't to reveal myself, the point was to write the best song I could." Folds also faced a backlash from some fans of the group telling iTunes Originals, "You've written something that's not for them, it's for everybody else. You've sold out." All kinds of things like that. That was overwhelming. We were the piano band that rocks. We couldn't even fit the song into a show. But for an industry with so many bands seeming interchangeable with faceless members, something about Ben Folds 5 stuck out. It was echoed by Vice President of Music Programming from VH1, Mike Tierney, who told an interviewer, "When Brick came to radio, there was no mistaking who it was. It was so different, it was impossible to ignore."
As weeks went by, it showed that she was not fine.
The group's second album also had several other charting singles, including Battle of Who Could Care Less, which charted at number 22 on the US Alternative Airplay chart, and peaked at number 26 on the UK Singles chart. The track Song for the Dumped peaked at number 23 on the US Alternative Airplay chart, and their second album proved to be their most commercially successful, going platinum.
Money back. And don't forget, never rest. Find a battle who could care.
The trio returned in 1999 with their third release, the unauthorized biography of Reinhold Messner, and the album was a sort of concept record that dealt with emotional dislocation. The album took its title from the name Jesse and his friends used on their fake IDs. Jesse remarked, "We were all Reinhold Messner. There'd be 5 or 6 scrawny high school guys going to some really cheesy meat market bar in Charlotte, using the same name and the same ID. No one seemed to care." Then the band found out that Reinhold Messner was a pretty accomplished climber who did Everest without oxygen and minimal equipment. They even tracked him down to tell him that they weren't trying to embarrass him with the album title, writing in the liner notes, "Thanks to Reinhold Messner for being a hero and now a good sport." Fans were pretty surprised by the change in sound on the group's third record, which featured more orchestration and less humor. Folds had in fact divorced his second wife in the run-up to recording the album. He was now in his 30s and had taken a new lover in an Australian woman.
I have recently taken a lover. Well, that's great. Congratulations.
Writing the album proved to be difficult for Folds, who admitted to procrastinating a lot. So much so that at one point he went to the group's manager and asked if he could play piano on Elliott Smith's tour instead of having to do another record. He told Spin, "I'd write a set of lyrics, then come into the studio the next day knowing we'd spent $250,000 and everyone's looking at me like, okay, what's this about now? And it would be something really close to me." They're not folk songs, but it can be uncomfortable. The single Army deals with Folds' own story of flunking out of college and possibly considering joining the military. The song was the only charting single from the record, peaking at number 17 on the Alternative Airplay chart. The album, meanwhile, peaked at number 37, selling around 300,000 copies in the States.
Oh, think I'll take you to LA.
but looking back at the group's third record, they looked at it as a failure. Folds said that while promoting the record, he and his bandmates found themselves run down and tired after a year of nonstop touring and disappointing record sales. He told NPR, "The people who came for the hit go away on your next record." The band released what would be their final recording for the time being, a cover of Steely Dan's Berrytown for the film Me, Myself, and Irene. The group broke up amicably in late 2000, and each of the members went on to pursue their own musical projects. Ben Folds moved to Australia and went on to have a pretty successful solo career and work with other artists, including William Shatner and Weird Al. The band did reform in 2008 thanks to, of all things, MySpace, taking part in a front-to-back series which saw them perform their latest album, their third record, from beginning to end. Sledge recalled, "Within 30 minutes of rehearsing for that concert, I personally felt like we had never broken up. The band played so well together. It really formed in my mind like, oh, we could probably do another record. We could probably go on tour. We could probably do a lot of things because musically we're in the right headspace." In 2012, Ben Folds 5 released their fourth record, The Sound of the Life of the Mind. The album reached impressive chart positions, including number 10 in the US, number 24 in Australia, and number 40 in the UK. The single Do It Anyway peaked at number 88 in Japan. They supported the album with a tour across the US, UK, Australia, and Ireland, but by 2013 the band entered another hiatus that became permanent, with the members pursuing other projects. Their longtime producer Caleb Southern would sadly pass away in July of 2023. The band briefly reunited for a concert to pay tribute to their producer on August 28, 2023 at the Cat's Cradle in Chapel Hill, performing 5 songs. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.